Good afternoon. I am Lawrence Cunningham, Chief Growth Officer of Business Publication Corporation. Welcome to the 2026 Business Record Economic Forecast. Before we begin, please join me in thanking sponsors and partners who help make today possible and help bring this sold-out crowd together. Please join me in a round of applause. We're grateful for the time you're taking to spend with us today, to learn, to plan, and to better prepare your organizations for the year ahead. Today is about understanding the signals that matter and how to translate those into real business impact. The Business Record exists to serve this business community by informing leaders, elevating ideas, and helping organizations stay positioned for what's to come next, regardless of the economic conditions. And that's why we're here today. We've got a great lineup of experts who will help bring context and insight to the economic forces shaping 2026 and beyond. As lunch is served, we'll take a moment to recognize the organizations who are sponsoring today's event. So please keep eating. And also know that our servers are not going to clean the plates today. We wanted to minimize the amount of impact that we had in disruption, and so they'll just leave all the plates at the table. We are honored to have Raymond James as our presenting sponsor. Now, for almost 15 years, that longstanding commitment speaks volumes about their belief in this event and in Iowa's business community. Raymond James is known for its client-first approach, offering personalized financial planning and investment advice tailored to individual goals. Their continued support of the economic forecast underscores a deep commitment to economic growth and long-term prosperity in our region. Please join me in welcoming Steve Devaney, Branch Manager and Senior Vice President of Investments at Raymond James. Steve.
Thank you, Lawrence. Like he said, 15th or 16th year. Love our relationship with the Business Record. They've been very, very good to us, and we're grateful that we're the sponsor again. At some point, they'll kick us out, but thank you again. And welcome, everybody. This panel discussion every year is phenomenal. And Tom Brady, the GOAT, Debbie Durham, is back on she's here every year. So anyhow, enjoy lunch, enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Raymond James, for your continued support and leadership in this space. We're pleased to welcome back the Iowa Bankers Association as a supporting sponsor this year. For nearly 140 years, the Iowa Bankers Association has served as a steady advocate and a strong voice both at the state and federal levels. Their support reflects a commitment not just to financial institutions, but to the broader economic health of our state. Please welcome President and CEO Adam Gregg.
Well, thank you and good morning. It's an honor to be here, honored to serve as the president and CEO of the Iowa Bankers Association, and we're very proud to sponsor today's event. A little bit about the Iowa Bankers Association. We're actually the largest state banking association in the country. Believe it or not, there are 265 banks that operate here in Iowa. 97% of them are members of ours, and many of them are represented throughout this room. So thank you to our banks. In addition to being the premier voice for the banking industry here in Iowa, we also operate two wholly owned for-profit subsidiaries. Iowa Bankers Mortgage Corporation is a wholesale mortgage provider through which we service nearly $10 billion of home loans in Iowa and in 10 other states. Iowa Bankers Insurance and Services is an insurance brokerage where we sell various insurance products to Iowa banks and their customers. And also through IBIS, we operate the Iowa Bankers Benefit Plan, which is a health insurance plan for 20,000 Iowa bankers and their families, with some new developments there where we're growing in Minnesota as well. So the Iowa Bankers Association, our companies and our members are very proud to be a partner to Iowans all across our state and for today's event. Sponsoring today is such a good fit because of the important role that Iowa banks play in our economy. I just want to give you a little reminder of the very basic bank business model. We take deposits and we make loans. In doing so, though, we create a positive cycle of wealth creation that essentially doubles the money supply in our communities, that allows us to support homeowners and small businesses and farmers and entrepreneurs. And it's worked well for centuries to create wealth all over our country and throughout our state. I mention it because decisions are being made on a number of fronts which threaten that wealth creation engine. Let me give you just one example. Did you know that in Iowa, there are a number of cities, counties, and schools that have, over the course of years, pulled their taxpayer deposits from Main Street banks and started putting them in Wall Street investments through what's known as joint investment trusts? And that's happened to the tune of $2.5 billion. That undercuts that multiplier effect that I was talking about. It takes wealth out of our communities. It increases borrowing costs. Just imagine for a moment if that $2.5 billion could be unleashed throughout our state. So as we talk about the economy today, I expect we're going to hear about an extended downturn in the ag economy. We're going to hear about the impacts that has on our small town manufacturers all across our state. And I'll invite you to think about how we might put Iowa first and unleash that $2.5 billion of taxpayer dollars to create wealth right here in our communities. With that, thanks again for being here, and thank you for the opportunity to sponsor.
Thanks, Adam. You heard it here first. Banks take deposits and they make loans, right? Okay. I'm making sure I picked up on what you said, so thank you. Our next supporting sponsor is Iowa State University. Through its economic development and industry relations work, Iowa State connects business leaders with research, talent, and innovation, strengthening Iowa's economy in very practical and meaningful ways. Their support today highlights a deep commitment to collaboration and statewide economic progress. Please welcome Raj Agnihotri, Dean of the Ivy College of Business.
Thank you very much. Welcome to 2026 Business Record Economic Forecast Luncheon. What a beautiful day. Kind of cold, but it's still beautiful seeing all this warmth here in this room. I'm Raj Agnihotri, the Dean of Ivy College of Business, and I'm here with my colleagues Peter Ralston, Judy Isles, Bobby Sullivan, Austin Strawhacker, Mike O'Donnell, Stacy Dreyer, and Patrick Klepchik. We are here because we really believe the conversation that we are going to hear today about the economic forecast very well aligned with Iowa State University's mission and vision. Innovate at Iowa State, that's what we say, right? So what do you need if you're thinking about economic forecasting? One is innovation, right? So Iowa State excels at offering our students and business partners a portfolio of educational opportunities aimed at increasing their capacity for innovation and entrepreneurship. And talk about entrepreneurship. We were just ranked number 9 in the nation for undergraduate entrepreneurship program. I think I have friends here. Thank you, Connie, and thank you. By the way, keep clapping on rankings because I've already said sorry to my friends from Tippy here. And I said, whenever I talk about, just keep your ears closed. So, and they opened for that thought. So thank you very much. And after innovation, what do you need? you need the preparation for next generation of leaders. And that's what where Ivy College of Business and Iowa State excels when it comes to job readiness. That's our mantra. And we do believe in preparing innovators and entrepreneurs who go out and create wealth for the societies and communities for the greater good. In that fashion, we are really working hard to create opportunities for you. Because if we have a talent who is ready and willing to do the job and who is ready and willing to stay in the great state of Iowa, that's how we're going to take the state forward. So that's our mission too. And in doing so, as I was mentioning, we are turning few heads. I talked about entrepreneurship. Wall Street Journal, another very fancy outlet that surveyed and ranked 500 business schools and actually universities around the world. And they believe in the ranking focusing on student outcomes, salaries, and economic mobility. Iowa State ranked the highest in the state when it comes to WSJ's economic mobility and salary. So that's what we are proud of. As we all know, our graduate programs providing opportunities for our professionals is really strong. For our full-time MBA, we are ranked #1 in the state of Iowa and #19 in the nation when it comes to public institutions. And Connie, for that, I would really like a clap. How about that? So thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to Business Record and our friends here for participating every year. I really look forward to events like this, and thank you very much for giving us that opportunity. Go State. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj, and thank you, Iowa State, for being such big supporters of them. We couldn't do these things without you. Our next supporting sponsor is Midwest One Bank. Since 1934, Midwest One Bank has built its business around community, supporting customers, businesses, and local economies across Iowa. Their focus on relationships and long-term success continues to make a meaningful impact throughout the state. Please welcome Market President Devin Boyer.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Devin Boyer, Market President for Midwest One Bank here in Central Iowa. First off, what a great commercial for community banking from our association president, Adam Gregg. Thank you for that. As I mentioned, Market President, Midwest One Bank, and on behalf of the Midwest One team, it's an honor to welcome you to the Business Record Economic Forecast, an event that brings together leaders committed to shaping Iowa's economic future. Midwest One Bank is proud to sponsor today's discussion because we believe in strong communities start with strong partnerships. Speaking of partnerships, as many of you have heard, and if you haven't, you're going to hear it here today, I'm excited about our recent partnership and announced merger with Nicolet National Bank. Some of you are aware that Midwest One Financial Group, our holding company for Midwest One, entered into a definitive agreement to merge with Nicolet Bank Shares, the holding company with Nicolet National Bank. The combined enterprise will create one of the most premier community banking franchises in the upper Midwest, with approximately $15 billion in assets and over $9 billion of assets under management. Together, we will have scale and resources to serve our customers better while preserving what makes community banking special: local decision-making, personalized service spanning across Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. As many industries experience, the banking landscape is evolving rapidly. Scale matters, not for size alone, but for the ability to invest in technology, expanded capabilities, and deliver convenience without sacrificing our values. Nicolet shares Midwest One's vision of banking delivered at the local level and committed to the community. In fact, last year, our combined institutions supported over 2,000 nonprofits and more than $3 million in contributions to our communities. What does this mean for our customers in this community? It means expanded services with the same great people dedicated to Des Moines. It means our teams remain focused on what we do best, mattering to our customers, our communities, and one another. It means commitment to being better together. By combining the strengths of Midwest One and Nicolet, we're building a stronger, more resilient community banking in Iowa and beyond. I look forward to today's discussion, and thank you for letting us be a part of this important day. Thank you.
Lastly, we're proud to recognize Deloitte. Deloitte provides world-class audit, consulting, and tax advisory services, helping organizations navigate complexity and drive growth. For well over a decade, Deloitte has served as the presenting sponsor of the Business Record's CFO of the Year Award, helping us to recognize exceptional financial leadership across Iowa. Please welcome Chris Tierhark, Des Moines Marketplace Leader at Deloitte.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. It's a privilege to stand before you today, as Deloitte has been part of the local business community for nearly a century and globally for over 180 years. Our purpose has always been to make an impact that matters, not only for our clients, but across the places that we call home. That's one of the many reasons that we're proud to sponsor this award today and really recognize the remarkable achievements of finance leaders as they shape the future of the business community. This year's event is especially meaningful for me, not only because I have the privilege to honor a remarkable CFO, but it also marks my first year presenting this award as the Des Moines Marketplace Leader for Deloitte. I stepped into this role just a month ago, succeeding my friend and colleague Rick Tewald, whose name may be familiar to many of you from presenting this award over the years. Today is about celebrating an extraordinary professional whose vision, discipline, and leadership epitomize what it means to be an exceptional CFO. While CFOs often operate behind the scenes, they are pivotal leaders driving sustainable growth, steer organizations through complex challenges, and set a high bar for integrity and performance. The Deloitte CFO of the Year Award reflects our commitment to recognizing these leaders, whose contributions ripple well beyond the balance sheets and into the fabric of organizations and our broader communities. And now, I am proud to present the 2026 Deloitte CFO of the Year Award to Ann Collins, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of EMC Insurance. Ann was nominated by EMC President and CEO Scott Jean, who shared that quote, "Ann truly embodies the principles of a servant leader. She prioritizes the success and well-being of others, empowering her teams, fostering collaboration, and consistently putting others in front of personal recognition," end quote. Ann joined EMC in 2021 as Senior Vice President, and after just 1 year, she was promoted to Executive Vice President and CFO. Today, she leads one of the most expansive portfolios in the organization and supports nearly 1,000 team members. Under Ann's leadership, EMC has reached new levels of performance and resilience. Through a strong focus of underwriting discipline and cost control, Ann and her team have helped EMC write more profitable business and control costs along the way. This has directly contributed to the success of the company financially. Ann is also deeply committed to community service. She's actively engaged in company initiatives and philanthropic efforts. She can often be found tending to the family farm, which is an authentic reflection of her work ethic and hands-on leadership style. Please join me in once again congratulating Ann Collins, 2026 Deloitte CFO of the Year.
little piece of hardware there that I don't want to fall over on and have that cascade go on the water glasses, but we'll try for it. Thank you, Chris, so much. It is definitely an honor to be here, and I am deeply grateful for this recognition. But to me, it is less of an individual award and more of a reflection of our team's everyday commitment to doing the right things the right way. I'm really accepting this award on behalf of teams across my underwriting, finance, investments, actuarial, and more, and whose discipline and heart drives EMC's financial strength and stability. Our focus at EMC is to, first of all, keep serving our agents and policyholders. Second, keep developing leaders. And third, keep building a company that's resilient for our customers and our communities. I truly believe that recognition is nice, but the real work is helping that next generation of financial and business leaders grow and enhance their data-based decision-making. That's where the lasting impact happens. The credit really belongs to the 2,100 EMC team members across the country, as well as our fantastic leadership team that empowers our team members, keeps us focused on that long-term strength and stability. I'm proud to say that our team is embracing technology and data-driven decision-making. And our leadership style, as Chris mentioned, is based in servant leadership. So we empower our teams and foster collaboration across the company. We invest in developing talent and building future leaders through mentorship and encouragement. We create a supportive environment where team members can grow and succeed, and where they are empowered to bring their unique perspectives. Most recently, all of the team's efforts on focusing on underwriting discipline, cost control, and advanced analytics has led us to robust surplus capital growth and industry-leading capital adequacy, a turnaround in net income, and the strongest trade combined ratio in over a decade. So in closing, I really truly am honored to now be part of this tradition of CFO of the Year, to be part of a finance leadership group that has high expectations, not only for ourselves, but for everyone around us. I'm grateful for my family, both home and work, who keeps pushing me to keep raising the bar of excellence. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Anne. And congratulations the entire team at EMC. What a really well-deserved recognition. I'd like to thank one more time, a really sincere thank you to our sponsors and our partners who helped make this event happen. We couldn't do it without you. We know that you have lots of choices in how you spend your dollars, and it's really meaningful that you continue to choose business publication corporations. Thank you. And now to get on with our panel today, please join me in welcoming President and Group Publisher of Business Publication Corporation, Chris Konetsky.
All right. While our panelists get up on stage here, I just want to say I'm excited to be here today. This event is always one of my favorites. It's the one that feels like it helps ground me for the year. You always think that you're prepared enough. Then, of course, you check your phone and you see that the stock market is down for the day because of bond yields in Japan. So we are perfectly timed to be able to try to digest that. Debbie says she wants to take that one right away off the top.
That's exactly right.
Before we get going today, on the screen you're going to see a QR code. That QR code is an opportunity for you to submit questions to me. I'll be able to see them on the backside, in theory. I won't be able to get to all those, of course, but it just helps me see if you're interested in something that we could address. In addition, we've got a brand new podcast, the Iowa Economy Podcast. In there, there's a segment where we call it Ask an Economist. So those questions that you submit today, those are things that we might be able to address on that show as well. So you'll see a little QR code. I encourage you to do it. Later on in the program, we're going to do something else fun with a little poll in the audience too. So being able to get into that program will allow you to do that. All right, we've got a lot to get to today. We're going to go ahead and get started. Between navigating policy changes and potential for new ones, plus, of course, questions about the future of the state's revenues, uncertainty, of course, might be the only certainty here for the year ahead. But I think what's interesting, we've had an opportunity to talk a little bit before the panel got going today. And the word, I can't remember exactly the phrase that you had, but with the uncertainty, there's almost a comfort with the fact that there's been uncertainty for the past year. And I think that's something that we're going to see talking about on the panel today. We've got a fantastic group of panelists that's going to help tee us up for the year so that we can get an idea of what to expect in the year ahead. We always say we don't hold them to their predictions and make sure that they're telling you the right thing the next year. Maybe we'll start doing that, but we give them a lot of grace. So let's give them a big round of applause today for being here today to help give us a forecast for the year. Directly to my left is Robin Anderson. She's the state's chief economist and division administrator, research and policy division at the Iowa Department of Revenue. Next is Debbie Durham, the director of the Iowa Finance Authority and the Economic Development Authority. Amy Friedrich, she's the president of Benefits and Protection at Principal Financial Group. Eric Lohmeyer, the president of NCP Capital. And Jeff Lorenzen, the president and CEO of American Equity. We're going to start with a question just to gauge how our panelists are feeling about the economy. So we're going to have you each answer a multiple choice question, and I do want you to make sure to actually answer the multiple choice part. All right, so in 2026, do you think the Iowa economy will A, improve dramatically, B, improve slightly, C, remain the same, D, regress slightly, or E, regress dramatically? And then, of course, why do you think about that? Robin, because you have an A in your name, you get to go first. Robin, go ahead and start us off.
I think,
Pull the mic up nice and close, too, for you.
yeah. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. When I dig into thinking about the Iowa economy in 2026, I think that we will incrementally increase. I think there's some good things going on. We've seen some modest gains in manufacturing jobs, at least as of November. I want to caveat that they're always subject to revision, but I think that's some good news out there. GDP as of the second quarter increased 3.7% on a quarter-over-quarter annualized basis. So we've got some good news coming in. There's I think that bodes well for the Iowa economy as we go into 2026, but there's a lot of uncertainty out there. There are significant warn notices, so announcements of layoffs last year. I think it was the highest since 2015, to over 10 years in terms of warn notices. And we're still seeing, we all probably know this in this room, struggling manufacturing and agriculture sector in the state. But with some of those incremental gains I'm seeing, at least in the job market, I do feel like we might see a little bit of increased growth this year, pardon me.
All right, Debbie.
Okay, so I'm going to predict, and you know, what the hell, since I'm not going to be here next year, you can't hold me accountable. I'm going to predict better.
Is this going to get crazy up
It
here?
is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to predict better than improve slightly. So I'm going to predict we're going to have a 3 to 4%, and I really think it's going to be 4% GDP. There's a lot of reasons for that. Construction jobs were up substantially in November. Building permits through October were up by 19%. And I love that the administration, federal administration, is going to focus on housing, because that's kind of been the area that we've not seen, you know, that has really been lagging. So, you know, the federal government is predicting that we're going to see 7 to 8% nominal GDP growth. I think that's really incredible, and I think it's doable. And it's really all based on productivity, which is non-inflationary, which is fabulous. And if you remember, Chris, last year I said we are going to rewrite the book on incentives in Iowa. We're going to get rid of this old model of number of jobs. We're going to focus on capital investment with Industry 4.0 principles, because we're going to drive productivity, because basically growth takes care of a multitude of issues in our economy. And we have done that. It went live in January, and watch out in February. You're going to see some incredible projects come forward because we're incentivizing the right things. We're still going to have jobs. They're just not going to be big number of jobs, but what the jobs are jobs that pay people living wages. And so we're concerned about the quality and not the quantity. So I'm going to go on that it's going to be a good year for Iowa.
All right, Amy.
So probably somewhere between B and C. So I'm
going
going
to B dash
B
0.5.
dash C.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me tell you one of the things that I think, and Robin said it in her opening comments. Debbie, you're talking about the fundamentals.
Yep.
I think the fundamentals are really good. I actually think the fundamentals are holding together really well. But those fundamentals don't necessarily play out unless you have certainty.
Oh, that's true.
Okay, so with more certainty, you get more people willing to do that expansion. You have more companies that are willing to do things with wages or do things with new jobs and expansion of those jobs, that their comfort grows with that certainty. So I think the thing that's leading me to hover between B and C is not the fundamentals of the types of industry in Iowa, what we have, sort of the basis that we have to grow from. It's the fact that we don't have overarching certainty. And so when we talk to business owners of any sizes, and again, Principal would talk to large companies, but we do some really good research with small companies as well. So the Wellbeing Index provides us with data, and that data is directly correlated that says certainty and economic growth are tied together. So we continue to see that tied. So the more we can have certainty, and by the way, that's not just certainty in Iowa economic issues or other issues, the further you move away from your local economy, the more business owners indicate that they're not certain. They lose a bit of faith. So as you begin to move out of the region and into more of a U.S. and global economy, their take is that they don't trust that as much. So the sentiment goes down markedly. And so if the sentiment can stay high, I think the fundamentals are there to drive growth. But I'm going to say that there's probably not quite as much certainty as we need, so it's going to hover between B and C.
If I remember right, in that survey, the confidence of a business owner in their own business was at the highest level, as opposed to how they felt about the economy externally.
It's always the highest. So small businesses and the ownership structures they have, they are saying that we think we've got the right formula to grow. That's what they've been saying for years, actually. What they say is we don't think some of the conditions will be there on a broader level in the U.S. to give us payback for some of those investments for growth. That's what they're saying to us.
Yeah.
All right, Eric?
Is this on? Okay. I'd say about a week ago, I was probably a little more in your camp on the B and C. And as I got closer to this event, I'm probably closer to a C. And what I'm going to bring in is, if you look at the larger, microeconomies in the state of Iowa, Central Iowa being one of those, kind of the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City corridor, what we're seeing across the board, and I think you're seeing this nationally as well, is with the increased adoption of AI-based, AI-driven, there is, I think, very real productivity gains, to Debbie's earlier point, that are actually happening right now, which if you're getting more productivity out of your existing staff, I don't see people saying, hey, I could, outside of probably some AI companies, where you're just saying, hey, let's, how many people can we get rid of? No. But it's more, how much more can we get out of our existing people? So I do think that's actually going to have, it's certainly not a positive effect on employment. And so I do see some things bouncing around the bottom in the ag cycle. I think a lot of that has to do with deferred maintenance and capital expenditure. It's been a 3+ year, massive recession in that space. I'm seeing the same thing in logistics and transportation. I think that's kind of settled out to even. So I see some positives in the Iowa economy, but I do think the employment picture, especially for newer people in their career paths, college graduates, knowledge workers, et cetera, I think that's going to be a real challenge for a couple of years. So I'm gonna go to a C.
All right, Jeff?
I follow Eric on that. I think it's going to be more of a flat year. I think there's still headwinds that we have to be thinking about. We have an economy that is very supportive of those with savings accounts and those that are older. When you look at the retired population who have no mortgages, they have good retirement, The last 5 or 6 years have been tremendous in the equity markets, and they've gained tremendous wealth, and they have a propensity to spend, but they're not the spenders in the economy. When you look at the recent graduates, most of them either have student loan debt, they can't afford to buy a house because houses aren't available, and they're more tight with their money. And I do think the consumer is going to be more challenged as we move forward. When you look at housing affordability, and this is what Debbie brought up, I think that's a longer-term play. When I look at some of the policies that are coming out of the Trump administration in regard to institutions buying retail homes, we're a small player in the market as an insurance company. We have $2 billion in single-family homes across the United States. So we're a small player. It's going to take time to dislocate those properties and get those reformatted back into the consumer's hands. I'm very much supportive of it. I think it's a good policy to have, but I do think it's going to take time. I also think there's a tail on these tariffs. A lot of inventories were built up going into the announcement of the tariffs. Those are starting to unwind, and now we're going to see some of those prices filter into consumer goods, mostly consumer goods, not services, but consumer goods. And I do think that'll be a headwind as well. And being an ag-based economy, a lot of those tariffs will impact us directly, and I think that's going to be another headwind that we just can't discount at this point in time.
A lot happened last year, and a lot, right? Between federal policy changes, lots of whiplash back and forth on that policy. We had a government shutdown that was extended for a period of time, and yet, interestingly, the economy stayed relatively resilient. And so you've got the stock market that's continued to be strong. Unemployment, inflation, and CPI haven't been as perhaps as bad as it might have been perceived to be, and that kind of makes me wonder, what position are we actually in? And I know that we're here to forecast, but I do think looking back might be helpful also. So if anybody want to take a shot, where do you think we are right now?
In
just the economy. If you're looking back on last year, describe the position you think we're in at the moment.
Well, last year was a difficult year for us, and of course, Jeff talked about that, and where ag was. I mean, we had a really difficult year for ag, oversupply, not enough markets. And I mean, you're right. I mean, you talk about the uncertainty, this tariffs, it's been disruptive. It's been challenging. It's erratic, it seems. But I think we're getting to a point that we're going to be okay and normalize the idea that we're going to have a 15 to 20% tariff environment. I mean, I think that's where we're headed. And so once we see some certainty, but then when you start throwing in things like Greenland, and we're going to take on our NATO allies, I mean, that's why the market's reacting the way they did today. That's quite frankly perplexing. But the fundamentals in Iowa are strong, and even you saw labor participation begin to climb up. That's largely due because if you remember when I started talking about what happened to labor participation after COVID was you had three populations that left. It was women who've really pretty much come back. It was young men, 24 to 35, which is national, which we still don't know really where they are. So they need to find their way back to work. And then it was retirees, like really me, 65 and over, that left pretty much in record number. The increase in labor participation was really directly related that they're coming back. I don't know why that is. I don't know if they feel that they're just bored or if they're coming back because, obviously they're having budgeting issues. But we are seeing some stability in the labor force, even with all the Warren notices that we had, in 24 in particular. They began to slow down a little bit in 25. But when you saw those Warren notices, the good news is that the marketplace absorbed those workers. So that's a good thing, and people are staying longer. And when we first started incentivizing productivity versus number of jobs, the reaction is you're going to have this massive layoff. That's not true. So they're keeping workers, and there's, and workers are staying more. There's no place really for them to go. So you see some stability there. So all of that is really to say right now that the foundation, and as you said, Amy, the fundamentals are really, really strong for Iowa going into 2026. And I do think this whole tariff thing is, like I said, I think we're just going to get to a place where we're just going to be comfortable with 15 to 20% tariffs personally, but that's where I think we are.
Hey, Chris, let me throw a little bit of data from some of the surveying we've done. So one of the things that I think will be interesting to watch play out, we've talked about inventory, Jeff, you mentioned kind of what had happened with that. small businesses and large businesses passed rate increases or cost increases on differently. And so in our data, what we're seeing is large businesses, and I think of them as functioning a little bit more like a spreadsheet, kind of a machine. Those large businesses knew what they needed to do to pass on some of those costs. So when you surveyed them, 70% of them are saying they've...
Nice.
Oh my
Do
God,
you have
I
a
did it.
child?
Oh, I did it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I cannot believe I did that.
Nice job.
Yeah.
I assume.
I even made that.
Assume at least half the room now knows
Yeah.
the 6, 7 things.
So about 70% of them said they've passed those costs on. Small businesses, that answer was about 51% have passed those costs on. So you can think of that two ways. They're going to hold on to it. They're going to protect their customers. They're going to do that in perpetuity. Maybe. I don't think so. I think at some point, if they don't have the certainty to do that, they're going to have to pass some of those on. That could, in fact, be trapped inflation. If we see something that looks like trapped inflation, then that will economically have an impact across the U.S., Iowa included. If small businesses say, we feel really certain, we think the fundamentals are good, we're going to hold on to what we have, we won't see that emerge ever. So I think there is a bet out there with respect to inflation on whether there's trapped inflation in the system or the system has actually worked fairly efficiently. So food for thought.
Excellent point. Can I add one quick thing here too? And this is one for me, and I'd say probably 95% Iowans in the room. Our state is a net export-driven economy to the tune of, I think, $4.5 billion or so. Robin can correct me on that. She is literally the #1 economist. Yeah. Yep. And if you think about that way, a lot of that would be I think we're 17% or so as a manufacturing base for our economy. Ag drives, the overall economy in Iowa. And when you look at what has happened really in the last 18 months, when you think about supplier relationships, those are trade relationships, those are built over years and decades and literally generations. And I take probably a little bit of a counterpoint to Debbie that we're just going to kind of learn to live with 15 or 20% tariffs. Because what I'm seeing in the world today, literally like in the last week, the European Union has been working on a trade deal with South America, Mercosur, for like 10 years or more. They're going to sign that deal in February. What is our #1 competition in this hemisphere for exports of ag? It's Brazil. It's South America. We are putting decades and decades and generations of trade relationships at risk, and I just think that might not be something that we saw the last 6 months or what we're going to see in the next 12 months, but once the next ruckus comes up with China, how many soybeans are they going to buy? So that's where I think it's not necessarily a B plus, for me. I think these things actually are starting to matter, and they're definitely not getting any better right now.
I was actually in Brazil right before the holidays, and when they heard I was from Iowa, they wanted to talk exactly about these issues. Mm-hmm. And so they are front and center. I didn't have a lot of ag information I could pass on. I'm like, I grew up on a farm. That was about all I could give them. But they are interested in those, and I think watching that dynamic is going to be something that's important to understanding where the economic climate sits.
Robin, from a state revenue perspective, talk a little bit about the impact that the ag economy has on overall the state revenue that we bring in.
Sure, I can go through that a little bit. So actually a lot of farmers, you probably don't know this, don't pay taxes. So I think there are secondary effects going on here. Are people feeling confident enough to go out and spend? How are corporations doing that are interconnected with the ag sector? And how do you see small farmers or small businesses pay their individual income taxes, not necessarily their farm income taxes? And when we think about state revenues, we've got 3 big levers. We've got individual income, we've got sales and use, and we've got about 7% corporate income tax. That's kind of how the levers work, not necessarily farm income, but it's all of those things encompassing together that will see that interaction between farm income and the rest of state tax revenues.
When you think about and Jeff, maybe I'm looking to you a little bit here. When you think about lessons maybe from last year that maybe you're trying to take forward into this year, any lessons that you have from the standpoint of running a business in this environment?
Oh, that's a good question. I think from running the business, the things that we're focused on are a lot of the things that I think most people in this room are focused on, which is how do you use AI in a way which is promoting the business rather than replacing business. We're focused on the employees. We want to make sure we have a workforce that stays intact. And how do you use technology? What we're seeing is, and I just spent last week with the top CEOs of the insurance companies, life insurance companies across the state, principal and number from Iowa were there as well. And I'd say a quarter of them are using AI in a way to replace employees. For example, voice bots to answer phones, and their whole customer service is going to be replaced with technology. I find that somewhat disturbing because I know when I get on the phone and I get a voice bot, the first thing I want to do is hang up and go a different route. Even a text would be better. I'd say we're a little bit behind in terms of how we use AI, but I do think it's going to be a differentiator. I don't think it's going to get us the productivities that is embedded in the equity markets and what we're seeing. I think it's overextended and people are overly optimistic. There's an expense to incorporating AI into your business. All the tools require fees and services. You need the talent. It's an expense. There's a strategy that goes behind it. So I think the lesson that we've learned from the AI side is be more aggressive. Don't be afraid to be early and find ways to automate. We're using it for, right now, we're using it for propensity to sale. We're using it for automation. We are using it on our customer service, but more as a way to take response times from 6 minutes down to 3 minutes. So we can answer more calls with less bodies is ultimately what it gets to. But we won't cut bodies. We just won't be able to. We won't need to add bodies as we grow. I think the other is as I look at some of the political tools that are being used from the administration, that some are being used, some are tools and some are weapons, and making sure that you're comfortable with the uncertainty that's going to come. For example, even tariffs. Initially, they were used as a tool to negotiate, to try and create a more balanced structure in our economy. Now I think they're being used as a tool for hostage, and I think they've gone the wrong way, and I don't know that that's a positive for the economy. But as we look at our business, one of the things we're trying to do is make sure that we are looking at the uncertainty that is out there, stress testing our portfolios to make sure that we are resilient no matter what happens. It used to be a down 2% in interest rates, or up 2% for us because we're inversely related. Now it's up 3%. We're taking our shocks and we're making them bigger because we think that is the potential risk that could be out there. And we want to make sure we have a stable balance sheet to protect our policyholders.
Robin, when you look at Iowa's performance, that obviously comes through in state revenues, maybe just give us a little bit of an overview of where we've been and what we're seeing, because that can be a real indicator for the state on how we're performing.
Sure. So we've seen revenues are expected to go down based on the Revenue Estimating Conference forecasts are expected to go down this year, but this is related to the tax cuts that we've imposed, including the phase-in of the flat tax for us as individual taxpayers at 3.8%. That is why we're anticipating tax revenues to go down. We run out fiscal years, this fiscal year 26 in July. But then as we go into next year, we expect that phase-in of the flat tax, there's year-over-year comparisons to roll off, and actually an incremental increase in tax revenues in fiscal year 27, in part because we see that bounce back in individual income tax revenues, but also sales. I'll point out that sales and use tax revenues are holding up pretty well for the state. They're actually ahead of inflation. I think, getting a little bit into the numbers here, fiscal year to date, they're up 3.7% and anticipated to be pretty healthy as we go into fiscal year 27.
Debbie?
Yeah, Kristen, let me just add on what Robin said, because the big, beautiful bill, one of the things that I think many people probably didn't realize, that Iowa has rolling conformity. So basically, whatever they do at the feds, we automatically have to do here. So a few years back, many years back, we created the Taxpayer Relief Fund, which is exactly what it is. It was really to talk about the things we've talked about with the tax cuts coming in, but also for 26 and 27, you're going to see us borrow from that. It's a $4 billion fund today. Even when it's all said and done, it's probably going to be $2.7 billion left. That we're going to do that by taking the part about no taxation on tips and overtime that, again, that we did not budget for because we didn't know it was coming, but that we have to conform. Having uniform, having rolling uniformity is a really great policy, but on this case, it will have an impact for at least those 2 years. But again, we prepared for it because of the way we do our budgeting. And I think that's important to stay, because every time I'm out, I'll hear people say, but look, you're taking out, well, that's, again, it's like your personal savings account at home. That was absolutely there to take care of these things. The good thing is Iowa actually has the reserves to do that.
So I would say, if I may, so when you think about fiscal year 26 and that down 8.9%, you've got the double hit, if you will, of the phase-in of the tax cuts here, but also the rolling conformity that Debbie talked about.
Yeah.
Debbie, as the state legislature, I careful where I go too far down this path, but well, maybe you won't be here, so maybe you can respond to this.
I'm a short-termer. Yeah.
The reality is there's still, it's set up currently, I think the estimate for the next year is an increase, but it's not as much, so there's still a shortfall, I think, in the equation of $1 billion a year at the moment. And so I'm curious how that, you think, not necessarily what's going to happen, but how does that shape the way the legislature is pursuing policy in the next year or so?
Well, I think they're obviously mindful of that, of course, but again, this was just, we talked about one reserve. We have some pretty healthy reserves across the government. I do think it's interesting that, I do hear legislators and people of my own party say we should be at zero income tax. I don't believe that. I don't think we need to be at zero. I think we do need to, and it's on a course to do that, get down to that 5.5% corporate income tax, flat, single factor. We can compete with that all day long. We don't need to be at zero. Of course, it's one of the smallest, as you said, what was it, like 7% or something of that. And I think that we just need to give time for the economy's ebb and flow. The good thing about the corporate tax reduction, Chris, if you remember, unlike Kansas, who cut taxes, didn't cut spending, and they wanted to know why they ended up in a problem, at least we have that safety net of corporate income tax is not $700 million. It doesn't go down, which it has not done for the last few years. So I think we're good. They're going to push the property tax. That really doesn't have an impact on the state budget, right? That's local. That's going to be a big topic of conversation. And they need to continue to keep spending under control. Governor put in a really tight budget, but we'll see what happens. So we do need to watch spending during these times because of where we came from with ag. But again, I think we're prepared for this, and I think based on pipeline and some things that we're doing, I think we're going to be fine.
So I have a question actually on spending, and I don't know if Robin, if you can answer this. Be nice. Are we maybe undercounting kind of that uncapped liability that's come into play with the education, private
Savings
school
account.
refunds? The ESA, is that the term for it? And I'll say I'm a recipient of it. I don't support the policy. We've donated that money. But that to me seems like a really uncapped liability. Knowing why they would give me a check for $7,000 is literally beyond my comprehension. But are we maybe undercounting that? Because that's one of the risks I see potentially in the state budget is you have this kind of like liability that doesn't really have a cap on it or income restriction that to me is going to keep growing and growing and growing with $1 billion less revenue.
I will have to say I need to stay in my lane on the revenue side.
Yeah, Robin gave me clear instructions that she's not in charge of the expense part of the equation of the budget and just the revenue side. So we'll have to do that one as a follow-up probably. But I think it's a really great question that you've risen. As we look at Iowa's GDP, Debbie, you mentioned that in the second quarter we were back up after a really bad first quarter. But I remember we had a conversation about that first quarter, and I'm just curious if you could provide a little context on what we've seen and then maybe what we might anticipate looking forward.
Okay, so I wasn't paying attention at all. I was talking to her.
Yeah.
So,
That's all right.
okay.
Generally, you don't respond to my question
I'm
anyway.
sorry,
so-
but it was relevant to the conversation at the table, so I apologize. Yeah.
When you look at GDP for the state, the
Yes.
first quarter
Oh, gosh,
was
yes.
really poor.
Yes.
The second quarter bounced back, and I wonder if there might be some of the, somebody mentioned earlier, people bringing in materials early, you got to get ahead of
Well,
things.
I
Just
think-
curious what you're seeing.
Well, and Jeff, you said that about the inventory, and I think that is absolutely true, that people were getting ahead of that. I mean, what happened was, we had that very report that we basically pretty much lost GDP, right? And that kind of made the headline, and a lot of people took that and ran to see, like, our economic policy's not working, I should resign. But of course, there was, we should always wait for reconciliation, right? Because once they did the rescission numbers, it didn't look anything like that, because they really underestimated where particularly soybeans and I think corn actually were when they finally came in. And so we ended up at about a 2.5%. The good news is that the USDA is predicting income for farmers, and this is nationwide, to be up 28.5% next year. And we think that's really good. I think it's going to be a big year for biofuels, and that's really important, particularly when you think of the Brazil, and maybe we'll actually get E15 year-round here. So I think there's, even on the ag side, I think there's a lot to be proud of. However, let me just say, every time we have one of these cycles, it really does become more and more imperative, who sits in this seat after me, that we look to ways to diversify our economy. And I look at Adam, because Adam, you remember when Governor Branstad was here during the farm crisis. That's how the insurance and finance vertical got started, right? He created this ecosystem. And so it behooves us to continue to say, because right now there's too much of a line of sight for our manufacturing and biospace directly to ag. So we need to find pharmaceuticals is a great place, certainly continue to do food processing, which is almost 25+ % of our manufacturing, so that those farmers have markets like right in their backyard. But we need to be, as a state, really paying attention to that diversification. So at least it takes a little bit of the edge out when we're going to have these natural cycles with ag.
From an energy standpoint, have you seen, what effects have you seen as there's been some change in the federal priorities in that space?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I run the energy office, and so the previous administration was focused totally on renewables, to the point they really went to war against natural gas, which made no sense to me whatsoever. And so those were really directly different policy changes. Now, I will say I was very proud of our renewable energy portfolio. We've been on that journey for years. But the wind does not always blow, and the sun doesn't always shine. And I will tell you, there is a tremendous amount of fatigue in the countryside. People don't want more windmills. They don't want more solar fields, right? And we are a production economy. We are a manufacturing powerhouse. And when you combine that with bio, that you can't run a production economy just on renewables. You have to have a baseline. So it is natural gas. Natural gas is Iowa's insurance policy, and we basically wasted 4 years of not developing it because it was not in favor. So I am an all-of-the-above energy person. I have always been. That has been Iowa's philosophy. And Governor Reynolds just announced the nuclear task force. Now, you're not going to see it for probably 2035, but we need to get ready for it. The other thing we need to do, because it's the energy thing that keeps me up. I don't know how you continue to fuel this economy with AI without major investments in infrastructure. So the other thing we're proposing at the state is a load forecasting center at Iowa State University. Well, they're not going to call it, you guys don't want to call it a center. I don't know why you don't want to call it a center, but whatever. It's going to be a center whether you call it that or not. But okay, we took it out because apparently that makes the Board of Regents all upset. I don't know. But the point is, it is a load forecasting for everyone in place in electrification. That includes our RECs and that includes our municipal. And it brings a certain level of transparency that I don't know that we always see when these things are going through rate cases. And we need to start preparing what that's going to mean. And I think those down the road are going to be some really hard conversations in Iowa because we've delivered energy a certain way, and I think that's going to have to change. So, and I really went way off on script, so I'm sorry.
You've never done that before.
I never,
So,
okay. Okay.
I'm curious from other panelists, what maybe, I won't ask you to predict what federal policy changes might happen, but I'm curious if you're watching anything or you're curious about that, that you're just watching with an eye to see what might happen.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about a couple of things we always keep an eye on. Certainly and I think one thing you have to keep in mind is that there's not one or just one metric that works for every vertical, that works for every industry. So there's certain industries that tend to be more responsive to things like interest rate cuts. So there's certain types of industries that when you do interest rate cuts, they're going to show up in the plans more immediately than sort of longer. So I think there is a belief that if we just keep cutting interest rates, it's going to help everybody equally, and that's factually not true. It just won't end up that way. And so we watch interest rates, but we watch interest rates also keeping an eye on labor, also keeping an eye on wages. And one point I want to make about wages is I think that probably gets a little underplayed in terms of the jobs discussion. The jobs discussion is really a function of how many people are employed, and if that's growing, and then if wages are also growing with it. So even if employment is staying kind of steady, if wages are moving up, you've got a different base to grow from, and it tends to be a more positive base. The research we've done on AI, whether you're a large business or a small business, consistently says what people believe is going to happen with wages is wages will go up. There is literally nobody. We just surveyed 1,000 business owners. Just the last time we did it was October. I don't think we got anyone to say that staffing will go down and wages will go down. We literally had no one respond positively on both of those. We had fewer than 6% of the people respond that they think wages will be impacted downward. So most people believe that wages are going to continue to go up. They do also believe that employment won't go down, but it might stay steady or just grow at a little bit slower rate. So we watch wage data as much as we watch pure labor data.
Eric? Add something on interest rates, and I'm really glad you brought that up because this is like my zinger.
Oh.
And
he's adjusting his seat.
I don't want to sit between the two of them.
To me, this is existential. We have, there's a reason why we've got an independent Fed. It's actually worked pretty well, I don't know, since the Great Freaking Depression. Yeah. When you, and I'm going to try to really simplify this down, but when you have an inflationary environment, today I think it's like 2.7%. The stated goal of the Fed is a 2% inflation. So we're running a little hot on inflation, and it has come down drastically, no question about it, right? We were running real hot. It seems to have kind of leveled out at that 2.7%. I'm kind of with Jeff here that we haven't seen the end of the effect of the tariffs. So I'll kind of call it a consensus. We're probably stuck somewhere between 2.5% and 3%. So we're running hot on inflation. So one of the things, and our Treasury Secretary has literally come out and said maybe we need to move our inflation target up. So instead of do really the hard work on inflation, this is Scott Bessent, maybe we move the Treasury, inflation target, if you will, to 3%. I think that's smart. Okay, that's a policy. Well, what happens if you start job owning or try to put people in place and take the independence away from the Fed so they can decrease interest rates? That happens on the short end of the curve, okay? And what typically would follow with the decrease in interest rates, you're trying to heat up the economy doing that way, that's pretty darn correlated with a higher push on inflation. When you have a higher inflationary outlook with a low interest rate environment, it's kind of pretty good for banks, by the way. I will tell you that's directly an industry that would benefit. But the longer end of the curve, who wants to go buy a 4%, 5 or 5% 10-year treasury when you've got an inflation outlook that's much stronger than potentially 3%? Okay? So what do you really incent? When people look at capital, whether that's M&A or long-term capital investment or buying a farm, they're buying long-term assets and they're typically or a home. How about that? That hopefully resonates for everyone. Buying a home, your home is probably based on a 15 or 30-year mortgage, which is really kind of priced off that 10-year mortgage at a premium. So if we jawbone these lower interest rates down, I think the high risk is it actually takes the long end of the rates even higher and makes it harder to buy that home. So that's just like economics 101. And my last point, and this is actually happening, and I've got the data here. What the Treasury is now doing, they are currently the largest buyer of long-term treasuries. The Treasury Department of the United States is currently the long-term buyer of U.S. treasuries. And how are they funding that? Issuing short-term treasuries. So that's when you get into something which we won't get into today called financial repression, but none of it's really good for an inflationary outlook.
I think one of the challenges, systemic risks that we have building, and it will play out over the next 20 years, is the lack of skilled workforce. The number of students entering universities is declining every year. And as that population shrinks, as the demand for employment grows, there's going to be strains that I think we have to be thinking about today, and we can't be thinking about 10 years from now. I think a number of the private colleges are going to be strained when it comes to keeping their doors open, because they are seeing a large number of applicants go down. Public universities that have bigger funds, state funds, will survive, but I do think some of the smaller colleges are going to struggle. But it's something that we need to think about. As a pressure from our hiring, it's always difficult to find skilled people. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to hire people remote in other locations, whether it's someone specific with certain actuarial experience, certain financial experience that they don't want to move to Des Moines. We have to hire them remote. I would love to be able to have a environment where the education system here is top quartile, where it brings families in and they want to be here. Our tax rate is now where it needs to be. I think it could be a little bit higher personally, and put that money into education and have a stronger foundation for our education across the state. Give incentives to bring people into the state to want to be here, not push them out. I think we'll have opportunities. I just don't think we're going to have the skilled force to be able to meet some of those growth demands that we hope to see in the future. That's just my sentiment.
Interesting.
Eric, you brought this up at the pre-event, and there will be a new governor elected later this November, and as a state since 2010, we've had a Republican governor, of course, either Branstad or Reynolds have been in power during that time. Whether or not the party changes, there's going to be administration change. Debbie, you've alluded to it today, your role as well, although we'll see if whoever's elected can convince you, maybe, But I'm curious, that's new change and it's different. So maybe talk a little bit about what that change might mean for us as we're preparing to go into that. So we haven't had that type of cycle in a while.
Yeah, you want me to do that?
Sure.
Well, I mean, it is going to be change, and it's interesting because I spend so much time across Iowa in communities of all sizes, and people are ready for a change, right? So there's kind of the winds are blowing that way. Well, I don't know that you're going to see a lot of change. Let's say that you have a Democrat governor. The House and the Senate are still going to be Republican. That's how it was when we first came in with Governor Branstad. Working with a little bit of a divided House, which actually, we still got through some really, really good policies on that. But I don't know that you're going to see major changes within, at least all I can speak is for IEDA and IFA. As I look at, I will be here 16 years when I finally exit. The thing that I am proudest of, that I can walk out the door and it's not going to miss a beat, because we have people there that are so mission driven. And I think what I find in all the state agencies, so it's the directors that will change because we're the political ones that are governor appointed. You'll see changes there. But Chris, I don't know that you're going to see a lot of changes, at least not for at least another 2-year cycle. Then as the legislature change, you may begin to see some other changes. But again, you're just going to see new faces at the director's level. But when you really look at the people that run these agencies and deliver services every day to Iowans, I just don't think you're going to see big changes there. And I don't see the House and Senate really. I mean, they may lose some of the supermajority, because I think they already did with the special election. So they may lose some of that, but you're still, I believe, you're going to have. And it could still be another Republican. I mean, I guess we just don't know.
Eric, I wonder if you have some thoughts.
I think And we talk about a lot of the problems, and I'll try to bring up one potential solution. One of the current policies, and I think there are like three. One's property tax relief. Yeah. You've got workforce, and then cancer treatment.
Which I was excited about. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And everybody's grandmother or mom probably gave the speech of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Iowa, unfortunately, in 2 ratings, is literally at the top of the heap with our cancer rates. I think every single individual here is affected by that. I lost a father-in-law this year. My own dad is dealing with it, friends, and I think every single one of you will have a very personal story to that. And these are Iowans, and these are relatively very healthy Iowans. There's something in the water. And I think the corollary of that in Iowa is our water quality, which I was talking to a couple of our panelists, and that is something that does come up when they're out of state. Yes. This is something that, and I think the health secretary even mentioned this. I kind of watched that on a podcast specifically about Iowa's water quality. So this is a national, if not an international. I feel like we're in Flint, Michigan, when they had the lead tragedy. So if we believe that ounce of prevention and a pound of cure, and this is something I think should be a very bipartisan solution, bring the Farm Bureau on side. And if we're going to throw that money into cancer treatment, why don't we take some of that money and put it into cancer prevention? And by cancer prevention, we have got to, as a state. I have 3 daughters that won't drink water out of a tap. We spent $4,500 on a reverse osmosis system in our house. And not every family can afford to do that, because that comes right down to it, their health. They've watched their family members go through this horrible thing called cancer. And the corollary is water quality. So to me, that's maybe a solution, is we've really got to address the source, literally the point source, the water quality. And there are ways we can do that I think in a very bipartisan, rational manner.
And Eric, I think, and I agree with you, actually. So the Iowa Finance Authority, runs the sewer and water program, and then we're also involved in the water quality. I will tell you there's not enough funding there. We need more funding. But I think what Governor Reynolds did is she's appropriating the money she can to do that. And there is a study that's going to be released. So last year she put money in to look at it, because as a cancer survivor myself, now mine was not environmental, we do need to get a hold of it. You're absolutely right. What is encouraging to me, because, I spend a lot of time with Farm Bureau and the commodity groups as we travel the world looking for new markets. There is a willingness for all the parties. I do believe you are going to see a very bipartisan and need to water quality initiative come forward. And I run the tourism office as well. And when you have lakes that you can't swim in the summer, it does not help us on us selling quality of life. So I'm very positive, and I do believe it will be bipartisan, and I believe you will have all the players at the table.
One of the things, in a moment we're going to do a little survey here in the room, but we asked that same question that the panelists answered to start about how they feel the economy is going, and we asked that to our audience earlier, and it's in the economic forecast issue on everyone's table. Interestingly, 2 years in a row now, we've had almost a complete split. It's shifted a little bit more positive this year. It was 46% were either positive or exceptionally positive. But 34% thought it would either regress slightly or regress dramatically. So you have this kind of big split in how people are viewing what the economy is going to do going forward. It's 2 years in a row in that way. I'm curious maybe what you think might be leading to that split in terms of the perception, because perception is so much of what happens ultimately. And I'll ask Amy to maybe give a shot at that one.
Oh, really?
It's because I saw you back it away.
So I think sometimes there's not enough understanding of sort of the true economic connection points. And so I'll give you an example. When, and again, people are like, Amy, why do you keep talking about small businesses? Again, principal, very large business. We certainly understand some of the things that happen within Wall Street, but our businesses that are often our fastest growing businesses tend to be those that are Main Street businesses. So they tend to be the ones that are small and mid-size. So we know a lot about those businesses. What I would say is that a good bet is that if you begin to feel like small businesses feel like their businesses have been heard better, understood better, they have access to funding, they have appropriate access to talent, and that we've done the things that we can to support them through their growth journey, you tend to get sort of a virtual cycle that helps everybody through the mix. So small business does tend to be a bipartisan popular issue, but I think people get confused on how helping small businesses actually broadly helps the economy. Larger businesses have the ability to find funding in other places. Many of them are even public companies. And so they have virtually, theoretically unlimited access to capital because they can go to the markets to get that. Small businesses won't have that. So when I think about the connections with community lending, when I think about banking, all of those end up reinforcing one another. So I think if more certainty can be given to small to medium-sized businesses, if more direct work can be done to understand those policies, you'll end up with a cycle that I think, regardless of where your politics fall, you'll end up believing that you have the ability to grow and you'll make a better contribution. So I think those things that can drive that number up and are driving some of that disconnection with that number really aren't back to the basics. And I think some of those basics are small businesses.
I'm going to ask each of you to we'll go down the line here on this one. Something that makes you feel a little bearish about the economy in the year ahead, and then something that's making you feel a little bit optimistic. And Robin, I'll have you go ahead and start.
Sure. I'll start with the bearish point, and I think this is something, Eric, you brought up a little bit around. It's what's happening with long-term interest rates. And what are the risks to seeing long-term interest rates rise for communities that rely on things like prime loan rates, auto loan rates, mortgage rates? And if we see long-term interest rates rise and move in an opposite direction to short-term interest rates, what's that going to do to the Main Street economy? And I do feel optimistic about productivity. I think we touched on this a little bit. It is showing up in the nationwide economic data. And productivity picking up is a good thing because that means the economy can grow without inflationary forces.
Yeah, so I would say, because mine are really related, it's still population, right? I mean, that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges we have. But it's not just Iowa, it's national. And I do believe that China is majorly overestimating how many people they actually have. So when you think about that, in fact, I think that's a real problem for the world. At the same time, the bullish part of me is that's where we have to focus on, because we're not going to have people coming in after you see the retirees leave in record numbers, that we're focusing on that whole Industry 4.0 and automation so that we can still increase wealth by growing productivity. So for me, it really is that productivity factor is the bright spot. The population is still our biggest challenge, not only as a state, but as a nation.
Debbie, you mentioned some projects that might be coming online. Anything that you'd like to share with us today?
Announced, but no. But thank you. But
Tried.
I encourage you. I do encourage you to come to our February board meeting. You usually have representatives there. I think you're going to be pleased. It's kind of a gratification that it is, because when you think about our growth plan, it really has been taxes and regulatory and trade, in the sense that how we control trade is we just look for new markets, and then making sure our incentives aligns with this new competitive environment we're in. And it's nice when you have a plan, Chris, and it actually comes together, and it seems to be working. So stay tuned.
All right, Amy?
Yeah, I worry. I'm going to come back to the point I opened up with, which was certainty. I feel like we're doing a little bit, kind of shooting ourselves in our own foot on some of the issues related to things that can feel a bit more certain. So I worry that certainty, especially for small and mid-sized businesses, that sentiment tends to be, there's as many decisions made off of sentiment as they are made off of spreadsheets. And the smaller The smaller business you go, the more you end up kind of seeing that dynamic play out. So if we don't feel a bit more certainty, if Iowa can grab the pieces that are certain, make sure we've got clear indications of what that plan is and how we're going to fund those pieces of the plan. I think any of those pieces of certainty help us. So I can sit on both sides on that issue. I get excited when I hear about long-term efforts and long-term efforts that have the funding that they need. When I see bipartisan support for some of those long-term issues, then I also know it's going to be good for the Iowa economy.
You made a comment earlier, steady with pressure. Is that did I say that right? I can't remember.
Yeah. I think kind of steady but strained.
Steady but strained.
Yeah, steady but strained is
better
good.
alliteration than.
Yeah. Well, I had time to think about it. Yeah.
It's also coined trapped inflation.
Yeah, well,
that's amazing.
well,
I wrote that down.
Great. My economic folks are going to be like, really? You went and talked about trapped inflation? Are you kidding me? So I think steady but strained. The strained pieces, we can actually reduce the strain if we increase more points of certainty.
All right, Eric?
That's true.
So this is probably macro, but it certainly means something for Iowa. I'm probably most worried and probably a little bearish about something called the wealth effect. And if you think about the wealth effect, and this goes back to one of your earlier questions, why do you have one set of Iowans saying I'm bullish and one set is bearish? Frankly, I think if you have wealth, if you've got outside your 401ks and accounts, you've been on a really good bull market run. From stock performance to commodities to most financial assets have been performed extraordinarily well if you look at a 10-year cycle. And I think it's been very easy if you have wealth to basically spend a little of that down. You make 20% of the market, and you take 2 or 3% of that out, and you take a better vacation or do a renovation or whatever it is. So I think that's the bifurcation. What I'm bearish about is I would make anybody's bet. I mean, the next 5 or 10 years are certainly not going to perform like the last 5 or 10 years, as far as where I strongly believe the performance of financial assets are going to be. And there's an old saying that goes, and it's true: bull markets don't die of old age, but I'll add my bit: they do die from over leverage. And I'll give you one data point, just a single data point. This kind of gets back to the AI. OpenAI, as of today, and I've seen 2 different statistics. It's either 16 billion or 20 billion of ARR, which it's basically annual recurring revenues. So we'll give them credit and say it's 20 billion of current revenues. As of today, they have $600 billion of obligations of leverage. So you have a company that is growing quite fast, but has 20 billion in revenues, and by the way, they're losing about $20 billion a year from a net income basis, and $600 billion of leverage and commitments. That really worries me, and it brings me back to kind of the year 2000s with the big fiber build-out. You had so much growth caught up in those markets and so many billions, and these are CapEx, and so these are heavily leveraged assets. So I do worry that there's the potential for that wealth effect to essentially bring down kind of that consumer spend and have a not so positive, probably a negative effect to the economy. Here's where I'm bullish. The ag economy and the corollaries, I'll say the logistics and transportation economies, both in the Midwest and nationally, have frankly just been so bad for the last few years. We are definitely seeing some green shoots there. We're seeing better performance. We're seeing fuller trucks, better routes, more profitable routes. So I'm frankly from a bullish side. I'm slightly bullish on the regional economy just because it does feel like we're bouncing on the bottom and we might actually get some growth this year. So that's actually a real positive, and Iowa needs it.
All right, Jeff.
I think from the weakness side, it's going to be around skilled laborers. I still believe that labor availability and the demographic pressures that we're going to see are going to limit our ability to grow as we move forward. We have to be able to attract skilled talent to the state because we're not manufacturing it through our schools and retaining those within the state the way that we need to. I'm on the other side of the economy. I think the steepening of the curve is a positive for financial institutions. If we can get mortgage rates now are around 6%, if we can get those into the mid-5s, low-5s, I think it will be a catalyst to spark housing again and get people buying. It creates that catalyst that I think we need, and I think that would be beneficial. I do think rates will ultimately come down some more, especially on the front end, quarter, a half a point. If we are seeing lower inflation, we are seeing softer growth, which I anticipate, we should see the 10-year Treasury maintain or go lower as well. And I think that will help be a catalyst to fuel some of the housing market that has been a tailwind for some time now.
Well, we're getting close on time, and I want to give each of the panelists a chance to give a closing thought, so get your closing thoughts ready. I always enjoy this conversation and enjoy doing this. I give them framework for the types of questions, and I always say, please don't try to prepare for all of them. We'll never even be able to scratch the surface because this is just the start of the conversation. I'd love to continue this. That's one of the reasons why we decided to start the Iowa Economy podcast. This conversation deserves space and deserves it throughout the course of the year. I always feel like we do this event, it's like the beginning of the year, well, I'll see you again next year about when we see how the economy has done. We now have the opportunity to do this on a monthly basis, and so I'm hosting that show. Instead of wrapping things up, we're going to be intentionally keeping the dialogue going from today's program. We're going to be revisiting some of the topics that we talked about. I've been jotting down possible show ideas for the rest of the year so that we can continue to monitor the economy throughout the course of the year. The goal of the podcast is to help you see just a little bit ahead of Iowa's economic curve. That's why we do this event. That's what we hope to help continue to provide to you throughout the course of the year. So I'd encourage you to both watch the show, which airs monthly, and we'll have coverage of that throughout our products as well. But also, I want you to be part of that conversation too. So I mentioned that we've got some questions there, and today, what I would like to do, if you can, pull out your phone. It's really easy. Everybody knows how to use the QR code. We're going to take a little poll here. All right, so I'll give everybody just a moment. I promise we won't publish your results. This isn't for that. Your name and information will all be kept private. So same question that we asked earlier today. In 2026, do you think the Iowa economy will improve dramatically, improve slightly, remain about the same, regress slightly, or regress dramatically? I believe that poll is live and going right now.
No, it's not.
Go ahead and give yourself about 10 seconds, if you could. Looks like we've thoroughly convinced everybody not to know. All right, we'll let that continue to tick away here. You can see we've got most people sitting in the middle, someplace to slightly negative. We're going to take the results of this. This will be one of the conversations. We've invited some of the panelists back and a few other guests to join us tomorrow, where we're going to talk a little bit about what we talked about today, but also some of the questions we didn't get to. We'll talk a little bit about that breakdown as well. That episode is going to appear on February 3rd, so you can look for that everywhere you enjoy podcasts. That's also on YouTube as well. Again, lastly, we'll put up the QR code. If you have questions that you'd like the panelists to address perhaps in the future or on the show, please go ahead and submit those. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to our panelists to give a closing thought.
Sure.
Right. Robin.
Yeah, sure. I will take it away. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here again. I had a great time. I think when I think about Iowa in 2026, I think there's some good things out there. We've seen improvements in labor force participation. We've seen a little bit better job data out there, a little bit better GDP data as of the second quarter. If you look at GDP, I think the Atlanta Fed's GDP now is at 5% for the fourth quarter. But I think, as Amy touched on, there's a lot of uncertainty. And uncertainty, we know, drives business decision-making behavior. Businesses will they might even pull forward some decisions like they did ahead of tariffs, or they will delay. And I think that delay could be a significant risk for the economy going into 2026.
Debbie?
Well, first of all, I want to thank the Business Record for hosting this incredible dialogue, but I just want to thank Connie and all of you throughout the year for always convening conversations, even some of them that are hard to do. So, Mike, thank you.
Thank you.
So, I've already said everything I could say economically, so I'm just going to close on a personal note. It has been a great honor to serve the state of Iowa. Thank you.
Debbie, thank you. Thank you. As you can see, everybody has respected the things you've done. I've always appreciated your openness and honesty on these panels.
Got me in trouble a few times.
It has,
Yeah.
and I apologize, maybe. But I do appreciate it from the very first time I did this and was nervous as heck that you were here to help me out as well and answer the questions in a good way. So thank you. All right, Amy?
Yeah, I've appreciated the discussion. I think we talked about a bunch of technical issues. I think in the end, though, what we got to keep in mind is that real work gets done through human beings. And so taking care of your employees, taking care of people, treating them like people, making sure we're putting things back into education and workforce development and the things that we do at work and outside of work in our communities. I think that's one of the ways that Iowa is going to continue to differentiate itself is through its actual people. So I'd say that's what is an economic value. Remember to invest in your people. It'll pay off.
Eric?
So my wife's here today. She'll be the only one that really gets this. But I do reach into history sometimes, and I thought about a closing remark, so I got into this a little bit this morning. But, you know, it's kind of happy birthday, America, right? It's a semi-quincentennial. Does anybody know the literal translation of that? It's half of 500 years. So this is literally the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th of this coming year will be our 250th, celebrated birthday. What happened in and around the signing of the war had already started, but the signing of the Declaration of Independence is kind of the official. And so General George Washington and multiple of these militias had fought a number of battles throughout that summer and into that spring and into that winter. And we came out on the wrong side of basically every one of those battles. And this was literally world news. Like, that's what I think of course, you've got the colonies, fighting the British, the biggest sea power and global power. They were like the United States in the 1700s. And we needed some friends. And we needed some friends bad. But nobody really wanted to invest in a loser. We were kind of going out there and losing every game. But we were, good strategy. I'm going to give Washington a lot of credit. I mean, they'd fight these battles, but then retreat, and fight the battles, but then retreat. And what did the British want? They want us to fight a big battle so they could whoop us. On Christmas Day of 1776, that evening, George Washington kind of understood the politics around this and the risk involved. And about 2,500 men and George Washington crossed the Delaware River into New Jersey. And it's called the Battle of Trenton. And they surprised the heavily German and British forces in that city and had a resounding victory. It was the first resounding victory of the United States Revolution. More important than the 900 hostages and the victory that they had that day was that news spread, and it wasn't like wildfire because it actually went pretty slowly. You had to go across an ocean to get it there. But that news, we had our eminent statesman and inventor Benjamin Franklin was in France lobbying for our cause. We needed a friend. We needed friends on continental Europe. And with that victory, Benjamin Franklin, with Vergennes and Beaucharmais and some of these other historical characters, was able to convince, ultimately, first Marie Antoinette, which you might remember that lady, and King Louis XVI, to ultimately, in February, just after that victory, in February, they signed, it wasn't the Treaty of Paris because that ended the war, but they signed the Treaty of Alliance. That Treaty of Alliance was effectively when Churchill said, oh, we've won the war after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. That's when people kind of in the know realized we were never going to win this war without alliances and friends. And it was French and then ultimately Spanish ships, trade, and money that really helped us ultimately win the war against the British. So I think that's a good note to leave on. Those alliances, those friendships have lasted literally hundreds of years and hope at the founding of our government. It's something we should probably never forget.
Jeff?
I always have to follow Eric.
Yeah.
I think from just from a closing comment, first of all, thank you for having me be here. I think from a macro standpoint, I think the economy is in steady waters. Inflation is under control. I don't think we're going to have accelerated growth. I think it's going to be decent growth. And it's something to be somewhat optimistic about. However, the uncertainty that lies out there, geopolitical, political risk is enough to hold people back to some extent. I think from Iowa, My family has a 175-year family farm, 1856, in eastern Iowa. I'd love to go back there. Every one of them has had cancer. I go back to Eric's comments about, I love this state, I love Des Moines, and I want to see a world where people are healthy, they're growing, they can live a happy life, we can bring people in to have a great life in Iowa. And that's what I aspire for the next round of governor, the next legislative slate that's out there. I'm a strong supporter. I'll be behind it. But I think it's really, really important for the state of Iowa for our success.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you, Jeff. As we sign off today, I want to thank everyone for being here today and spending the time with us. Thank you again to Raymond James, the Iowa Bankers Association, Iowa State University, Midwest One Bank, and of course Deloitte for your support of today's event. And of course, congratulations again to our Deloitte CFO of the Year, Ann Collins. Yes, another round of applause. I say all the time, it's our job to help businesses do business better. Events like this, these are the types of things that we try to put on to help make sure that you have access to the information so you can make the best decisions for your business possible. That is how we get to have the good news in the community to take on and share with everybody as well. Jeff talked about a big challenge for this community. There were multiple different challenges and issues. We don't try to shy away from those issues because we think it's really important for us to talk about those through a solutions-oriented approach, right? So you'll see our journalism when our team is out writing about it. They're talking about the challenges. We think it's important for you to understand those, but also then how we can impact those. So thank you to our panelists again for helping bring those challenges to light so we all have a little bit better understanding of what the economy might look like in the year ahead and what our community is going to be continuing to navigate. I'll just share that I'm bullish about the economy. I think if you bring it back to the local level, and I think we talked about this, if you bring it back and look at our business, and you ask me, how do I feel about our business? I go, I feel really confident about the direction of our business. I think it becomes a little harder when you get farther and farther away from that. And I think even the question that we asked down there, I'm asking you, how do you feel about the Iowa economy? Well, that's a big question. But if you think about how your business is going to perform and how you're feeling about the year, I'm feeling bullish about it. And I want to thank the panelists again today for giving us their wisdom and information. Let's give them one final big round of applause. Thank you, and have a great afternoon.